going up to Chris and going, just don't suck this time. Do it again, but suck less.
If we can discuss the fact that this is maybe not a franchise that's going to go on forever, how you feel?
What? Talk like that.
How do you feel about the idea of James Gunn and you guys not necessarily being part of the same gang?
I'm against it.
And so because he's not present, he's not being the leader that he should be, that actually opens the Guardians up to vulnerability.
So it's a very bittersweet thing.
But, listen, I'm excited for them to go do whatever they want to with Guardians.
Disney's Cosmic Misfits just fired the first shot. The Guardians claim the magic is dead, and they're pointing straight at Bob Iger. One ruthless boardroom move shattered Marvel's most beloved family.
You have to know how to sort of ooze your way through things in a kind way.
Here's the secret Disney never wanted you to hear. The first cracks showed on the Guardians' Volume 3 press tour when Chris Pratt casually dropped the MCU's first on-camera F-bomb.
And so because he's not present, he's not being the leader that he should be, that actually opens the Guardians up to vulnerability.
A sign the cast no longer cared about Disney's squeaky-clean rulebook. Back in Burbank, employees were still reeling from Bob Iger's decision to cut 7,000 jobs, even as his own pay package ballooned to more than $31 million. While cameras rolled, the Guardians ensemble discovered through industry leaks, not studio calls, that Marvel had erased every future appearance of their characters from its slate. Dave Bautista immediately declared he was finished playing Drax, and Zoe Saldaña's farewell posts thanked James Gunn and the fans but conspicuously omitted Disney. The message was unmistakable. The misfits who carried one of Marvel's most beloved franchises were being shown the door while the executive suite cashed in, and their frustration began leaking into every interview, foreshadowing the showdown that would erupt on James Gunn's own set. James Gunn thought returning to finish Volume 3 would be a victory lap, the happy ending after his public firing and dramatic rehiring, but the set he walked into felt less like a homecoming and more like enemy territory.
Going up to Chris and going, just don't suck this time. Do it again, but suck less.
Budget lines were slashed, new advisors hovered behind every monitor, and quiet studio reps took notes on which scenes could be clipped for future streaming spin-offs. Crew members nicknamed them the Shadows. Gunn later admitted it was the hardest shoot of his career, hinting that trust had evaporated. When you're making a movie with people who don't believe in you, he said, every day is a grind. Still, he pushed to keep Rocket's darkest flashbacks, fought off AI-ready dialogue passes, and shot the finale exactly as he'd promised the cast. But once the cameras stopped, those same shadows delivered the final blow, telling Gunn in hushed tones that Marvel's new marching orders were volume over value, and that the Guardians were now considered non-core IP. Gunn never said it outright, yet every weary glance on set told the story. The family he built was being dismantled one spreadsheet at a time, and the cast, hearing whispers of canceled spin-offs and frozen contracts, realized the real battle had only just begun. The Guardians learned just how brutal corporate silence can be. Calls to their agents stopped coming, emails about sequel talks went unanswered, and each actor discovered through back-channel whispers that Marvel's famed 9-picture contracts had been quietly replaced by flex deals, short-term, low-bonus offers designed to freeze them out. Dave Bautista was told Drax no longer fit the brand's comedic direction. Karen Gillan's Nebula spin-off pitch died in an empty conference room, and Bradley Cooper heard that Rocket's future was under internal review. Even Zoe Saldaña, who'd anchored 2 of Disney's highest-grossing franchises, got nothing but a polite thank you card. Legal teams then circulated fresh non-disparagement addendums, warning that any public criticism could trigger multi-million-dollar penalties. Behind closed doors, reps called it a slow-motion blacklisting. On social media, fans noticed the sudden hush. Chris Pratt finally broke that silence at a London junket, venting that he had to learn about Star-Lord's fate from Twitter, not from Disney. The trust was gone. The contracts were ice, and the cast realized they were being pushed off stage without ever hearing the last cue. But Disney's next move would sting even worse. A cost-cutting gambit that threatened to erase their voices altogether. Long before the ink dried on their goodbye posters, executives were plotting to replace the Guardians without ever hiring new actors. At a 2024 investor demo, Disney's tech arm unveiled synthetic performance software that could clone a star's voice from archived dialogue, complete with a mock-up of Rocket riffing in Bradley Cooper's exact cadence. Word of the presentation slipped onto set within days. Engineers were suddenly requesting extra ADR sessions for archival purposes, and animators were told to flag any scenes that would cleanly loop for future repurposing. Rumors spread that Rocket and Groot could be voiced by AI in merchandising shorts, their human counterparts reduced to a line in the credits. Original performance sourced from legacy files. The cast was furious, but fresh non-disclosure clauses barred them from speaking out. Dave Bautista vented in a cryptic tweet about digital grave robbing, then deleted it under legal pressure. Meanwhile, staff who questioned the ethics were reminded the software could save tens of millions in residuals. The message from the top was blunt. Nostalgia sells, but paying the people who created that nostalgia is optional. And just as the Guardians were grappling with the prospect of being deep-faked out of existence, Bob Iger stepped in front of a news camera to accuse Hollywood labor of being unrealistic about compensation.
We wanted to do the same thing with the writers, and we'd like to do the same thing with the actors. There's a level of expectation that they have that is just not realistic. And they are adding to a set of challenges that this business is already facing.
Igniting a showdown no algorithm could paper over. Bob Iger's next public appearance lit the fuse. Sitting in an air-conditioned studio far from the picket lines, he shrugged that writers and actors wanted a level of compensation that just isn't realistic.
That is, quite frankly, very disruptive.
So they're not being
and
realistic?
dangerous. No, they're not.
Why not?
I can't answer that question. I respect their right and their desire to get as much as they possibly can in compensation for their people.
Even as his own pay soared past $31 million, Hollywood's rank and file heard contempt. The Guardians cast heard the final insult. Dave Bautista blasted a private group chat with a single line. He thinks we're the problem? While Chris Pratt quietly Venmo matched every crew member he'd ever worked with, who was now out of a job. Zoe Saldaña skipped a red carpet gala and was photographed delivering coffee to strikers outside Disney's gates. Social media dubbed her Nebula in real life. Within days, picket signs began sprouting Baby Groot cartoons beneath slogans like, "I am worthy of residuals." And the once unified Marvel brand looked suddenly fractured. Executives on conference calls, cast and crews banging drums in the street, fans posting side-by-side images of Iger's salary and a background actor's eviction notice. The optics were catastrophic, but the damage to trust was worse, because if the man who'd made billions off their faces thought they should settle for less than a living wage, what other corners was Disney willing to cut? The answer would arrive in the form of a film so controversial it made the Guardians fiasco look like a warm-up act. And it came with a single explosive word: Lightyear. Then came Lightyear, the film Disney swore would rocket them back into orbit, only for the booster to detonate on launch. A 10-second same kiss, first snipped, then hastily restored after Pixar staff revolted, sent censors in 14 countries slamming their doors. Chris Evans, the studio's new buzz, fired back by calling the critics idiots, turning a children's movie into a frontline skirmish in the culture wars. Parents argued in school board meetings, theaters threatened to fast-forward the scene, and conservative pundits declared Disney gone woke, go broke. They weren't entirely wrong about the last part. The film's muddled premise, Tim Allen's unexplained absence, and the political crossfire combined to leave a $16 million crater in Disney's balance sheet. Inside Pixar, artists whispered that the real fight wasn't about representation, it was about control. For years, they'd watched rainbow stickers vanish from storyboards and same-sex couples fade in revision rounds. Casual erasures justified as international market sensitivity. The public Lightyear fiasco simply dragged the tug-of-war into daylight. By the time Bob Iger held a town hall pep talk, staff were openly joking that they'd need a hyperspace jump to escape the next backlash. One animator summed up morale in a single Slack emoji, buzz plummeting with "to infinity" and "ouch." The Lightyear implosion proved the Guardians' disaster wasn't an anomaly, it was a pattern. Evidence that Disney's magic lamp was running on fumes, while executives kept polishing the brass. And as the company scrambled to spin the narrative, the cracks only widened, setting the stage for their most chaotic year yet. That chaos reached ground zero at the parks Walt himself once called the happiest place on earth. First, a disgruntled ex-employee breached the internal menu system and rewrote allergen listings, swapping peanut warnings to peanut-free and slipping profanities into kids' meals. For 2 panicked weeks, staff printed paper menus and checked every churro cart by hand, praying no family with a nut allergy trusted the sabotage. The hacker was eventually cuffed, but not before executives admitted the intrusion cost hundreds of thousands in shutdowns and forced upgrades, another bill to tack onto a year already bleeding red. While tech teams were scrubbing code, frontline cast members fought a different fire, guests hiring rent-a-disabled guides to exploit the disability access service. For $100 cash, perfectly healthy vacationers could pose with a stranger in a wheelchair and skip every cue from Space Mountain to Rise of the Resistance. Videos of grinning families bragging about the scam went viral, and overnight Disney tightened the rules so hard that genuine visitors with mobility issues found themselves interrogated on Zoom calls and asked to justify their diagnoses. The backlash was swift, a class action lawsuit claiming civil rights violations, angry parents on local news, and heart-wrenching posts from kids who now stood in the Florida sun for 3 hours because a handful of cheaters gamed the system.
I obviously have deep passion for the company and the business, and I care a lot about the people. After coming back, realized that the company was facing a number of challenges, some self-inflicted, some caused by changes in the business, in large-scale disruption of certain parts of the business. And while a lot of work has been accomplished in the 7 or so months that I've been back, the board believed, and I agreed with them, that there was a lot more work to do.
These weren't movie flops or box office headlines. They were real-world failures that guests could touch, taste, and tweet in real time. The facade of meticulous Disney perfection cracked with every hacked menu, every stalled ride evac, every shamed wheelchair swap. And as the board scrambled to patch holes with PR statements, the people who once wore the mouse ears on red carpets saw a final confirmation of what they'd suspected for years. The Empire's magic was an illusion held together by NDAs and nostalgia. With that realization, the Guardians cast decided silence was no longer enough, and their next move would be felt far beyond the berms of Anaheim and Orlando. Away from cameras and contracts, the Guardians regrouped in a private chat they jokingly titled the Milano Mutiny. Screenshots leaked months later show Chris Pratt offering to bankroll an indie project for any crewmate iced out by Disney, Karen Gillan swapping short film scripts with Zoe Saldaña at 2 a.m, and Dave Bautista daring the thread to name one exec who's ever sat through prosthetic removal at 3 a.m. They started acting on those pledges too. Pratt funneled streaming money into a veterans-run animation studio. Gillan flew to Glasgow to shoot her first micro-budget feature in secret. Saldaña signed on to produce Latina-led science fiction, and Bautista fired his old agents to chase awards-bait dramas. Even the quietest member, Vin Diesel, who rarely typed more than I am, forwarded every AI voice article he found, stamping each with a skull emoji. Their rebellion was built on absence as much as action. No congratulatory posts when Disney hit a quarterly milestone. No polite retweets of official Marvel anniversaries. At premieres for other studios, the cast walked red carpets in matching silver bracelets engraved with one word: found. Reporters assumed it was an inside joke. Fans decoded it as a declaration of freedom. When James Gunn announced his new DC slate, every Guardian boosted the trailer within minutes, flooding timelines with rocket ship emojis and thinly veiled jabs about studios that still believe in storytellers. Hollywood couldn't miss the signal. The family Disney claimed to own had slipped the leash, and their united silence was about to get very, very loud. Everything Disney tried to bury now glows like neon. A billion-dollar cast ghosted, stories diced for algorithms, theme park perfection hacked in plain sight.
I'm extremely optimistic about the company and its assets, and we should talk about them.
We will.
But I would say that in some cases the challenges are greater than I had anticipated.
The Guardians' quiet rebellion proves one truth: magic dies the moment the accountants forget who lit the first spark. Bob Iger can spin spreadsheets and AI demos all he wants, but every silent red carpet snub, every silver found bracelet, whispers the same warning: no studio holds a galaxy together once trust is gone. So ask yourself, if Disney is willing to mothball its most beloved family for a quarterly bump, what hope is left for the rest of its crown jewels? Because the next fracture is already splintering the mirror, a live-action Snow White remake, drowning in backlash, renegotiations, and rumors of total shutdown. That story is wilder, messier, and it starts with a princess who never made it to her happily ever after. Stay tuned. The fairest disaster of them all is coming next.